Welcome to the sovereign system, the only place where we don't just analyze the system, we architect a way out. Are you tired of being told you're a component, a mere cog in a machine you don't understand? We reject the idea that your only goal is to survive the chaos. Our purpose is to become sovereign, that is, fully decoupled, resilient, and in command of your own life. Each week, we use a powerful 360-degree framework combining Terence McKenna's novelty theory, occult history, material sciences, and the intentional change model to cut through the noise and reveal the forces shaping your reality. I'm Dave, one of your hosts. While I often dive deep into galaxy brain complex systems, my co-host John ensures I stay grounded and focused on practical, real-world steps.
That's right, Dave. My job is to be the street level translator. I make sure that everything we discuss, from the massive novelty spikes to the four quadrants of reality, is immediately actionable in your day to day life. We're here to build the bridge between the grand geopolitical chess game and the health of your mind, body, and bank account.
Not only bank account, but also your soul. But let's dive in. This is the sovereign system. Well, here we are again. Um, this is episode 5. That's actually pretty fantastic. I liked kind of what we were doing last time where we opened up with just like casual conversation. And let's talk about some of our sovereign wins that we've experienced in the last week, especially since the last, episode and stuff like that. So, John, I'm going to hand it over to you. I know that you had something pretty scary happen in the last week or so. Gave pretty much everybody a big scare. And I appreciate you being willing to discuss this, especially in an open forum and being vulnerable with us, not only myself, but our architects and our audience. So, why don't we kind of dive into it a little bit and let us know what happened.
Yeah, Dave. So last Sunday, I went to urgent care. I wasn't feeling very good. I woke up thinking I was dying, pretty much. I mean, I guess you could say I was. Um, but
Yeah.
the catch is, I went in. They did what's the 12 points? I don't remember the 12 points to check your heart. I
Yeah,
don't
the
remember what it's.
EKG.
EKG. They did that. They had to shave my chest. That was weird. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it wouldn't stick, man. The woman kept trying to stick them. They wouldn't stick. But we'll go back to why I was there. They told me that my symptoms I was giving them. At first, I thought it was pneumonia, but the symptoms I was giving them, they told me like heart attack symptoms, and I was kind of sitting there like,
Yeah, pretty
what?
shocking. Like
Oh yeah,
kind of like very
I thought
scary.
I was
Yeah.
getting punked. I thought Ashton Kutcher was going to run through
Yeah.
the door and everybody was going to be like, "Ha, we got you." But no, no.
So you're totally shocked.
Oh yeah, the doctor was just kind of staring at me like, if it gets worse, go to the emergency room. And I was like staring at him like, "What? What did you say?"
He just told me I'm having a heart attack. What do you mean if it gets worse, go to the emergency room?
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess that's what I paid my $50 for at urgent care, was for the guy to tell me to go to the emergency room. But the good news, though, is that was kind of a reality check for me. I kind of
A
realized,
massive catalyst, right?
yeah, oh yeah, I realized I was drinking 600 milligrams of caffeine a day. So we're cutting back. I think I'm at about, I haven't drank a cup of coffee in like 3 days now. So we're
Yeah,
feeling,
how's the jitters?
What I don't know if it just hasn't hit yet or what, but I
Yep,
feel great. I feel fine.
that's good. No, that's awesome.
I do feel tired throughout the day because I don't have that much caffeine pumping through my veins. So
Yeah.
like today was a good example. Around 5, I just laid in bed because I was exhausted. But I think overall, I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah.
I
And I know that you also talked a little bit, so that's obviously a sovereign win. You
mhm.
identified most likely root cause, and those symptoms very well could have been anxiety, especially from that level of caffeine. And you also had mentioned that you were doing some other stuff with like social media. Why don't you kind of go over those ones really
Oh yeah,
quick, and
so yeah, no. You're right, and then we'll go back over to you. I was wasting a ton of time looking at Instagram and Facebook. I mean, the amount of time I wasted just scrolling, liking other people's posts, posting my own garbage. I realized I was like, wait a minute, We got to reel this back. I deleted the two apps, and that was since I think I deleted them on either Sunday or Monday, or maybe it was Saturday. I don't remember, but it was over the past weekend. I feel free. The word is free, Dave. I feel
Yeah.
freedom.
Your attention is back in your own command, and you finally have agency again. My sovereign win is I'm actually building projects, kind of little top secret, maybe not. We mentioned on the podcast, so not top secret, but I'm not going to get into specific details. It definitely has to do with our novelty spike, though. I'm calling it the Hive, and it just means that, I'm not going to have to rely on big tech anymore and stuff like that. It's really about becoming sovereign and kind of self-reliant, especially with newer technology coming out, and things of that nature.
That's
So,
awesome, Dave. That's awesome.
yeah, very, very excited to kind of see how it turns out. So, welcome back, architects. This week we're cutting the strings on trauma. We're using Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score, not as a diagnosis, but as a weapon for sovereignty. So we'll go over this week's episode real quick so you know what you're in for. First, we hit the novelty spike in AI mesh networks. Why you should care about Potluck Net versus Skynet? Well, because it's a blueprint for distributed sovereign authority over your data. Next up is the deep dive, traumatized system versus the sovereign body. We break down the four quadrants of trauma. Is your struggle a broken file or a stuck map? Find out which perspective gives you the power. And then we have the sovereign breakthrough, reclaiming the frontier of the body. We give you the four-step escape route to turn your identity cage into a heroic descent. Finally, your homework this week for intentional change model. Our learning agenda is going to be the nervous system audit. You learn how to stop seeing panic as a medical failure and start tuning your antenna to instantly reclaim your calm. You are not broken. You are the architect. Let's build.
Sounds like an awesome episode, but maybe we should recap last week's episode first.
Sure, John. Here's a super quick rundown of episode 4. We hit the deep stuff with the four quadrants bifurcation, and then we landed on the practical take it home authority audit.
Dave, we really tore apart the official disclosure script, right? It's the four quadrants bifurcation, the moment where we split everything into two piles: the materialist version, which is basically the system's lie, and the esoteric path, our own sovereign truth.
Nailed it, John. We showed how the system is desperately trying to manage this massive global shift by literally microdosing your life experience, the tilt-rated soul, and doing a shabby software update to your physical form, turning your magnificent biological antenna into a plain old meat suit. Pretty rude.
And instead of the cool, awe inspiring galactic mythos we should be enjoying, they replace it with a clinical snooze fest medical case study. They're basically using regulatory capture to put a VIP velvet rope around the actual truth. It's the ultimate puppet show, making us consent to their version of reality.
Yep, absolutely. To cut the strings, we drop the four acts of sovereign consciousness, your personal roadmap to reclaiming the frontier of your perception.
Which brings us to the homework, the sovereign win, the authority audit. This is straight up psychological judo based on the intentional change theory.
The gig is simple. Grab any article, UAP's consciousness, whatever is official, and highlight every time they put an appeal to authority card. Researchers say, experts believe, sources close to the matter indicate.
Then you just rewrite that sentence and replace the external authority with one powerful word: I.
This simple mental move yanks your brain out of the odd self, or the version of you that believes what you're told, and plants you firmly in the ideal self, the person who trusts their own internal compass. It's the final key to truly owning your own reality.
So fire your authorized translator, do the audit, and start writing your own epic.
100% John, spot on. Now let's pivot to this week's novelty spike in AI mesh networks. Less Skynet, more neighborhood watch.
That's this week's novelty spike, folks. Dave, you brought up a term that sounds like something a robot uprising would file paperwork for. Personal AI nodes in a distributed authority mesh network. Is that like the tech version of a flash mob?
Not quite a flash mob, John. Think of it less like a single all-powerful AI a la Skynet, and more like a high-tech version of a really organized neighborhood watch, but for your data. The technical term is distributed authority system, and what you highlighted, personal AI nodes or mesh networks, are the little foot soldiers.
Foot soldiers, right? So my phone is now like a little digital GI Joe talking to my smart fridge and my thermostat. Sounds chatty.
In a nutshell, yes, and it's actually a huge deal for novelty spike events. That sudden, overwhelming surge of new information, instead of one massive central server trying to process everything, which, can be slow, biased, or a massive single point of failure, your personal AI node processes data for you locally. And then it talks to the other nodes in the mesh network to share validated insights, not raw data.
So if one node spots a squirrel in the data that looks like a cat, the rest of the network goes, nah, man, that's just a squirrel wearing a tiny disguise.
Exactly. It creates a consensus. You get better security, better privacy, and less systemic error. It's based on the idea that many small, diverse perspectives are better than one big, centralized brain. For a deep dive, you can check out some of the academic work on decentralized autonomous organizations or federated learning. They're essentially applying this distributed authority idea to AI.
Federated learning, I'm picturing a bunch of AIs in tiny suits having a very formal meeting. So, what's the funny real world parallel? This all still feels very future.
Okay, here's a funny one. Imagine a potluck dinner. The central authority model is one person, the host, trying to cook everything for, say, 50 people. The distributed authority model is the potluck itself. Everyone brings just one dish, their personal node, that they all made well. Then they share samples and rate each other's foods. The mesh network's consensus. It's faster, the food is more diverse, and if one person accidentally burns the lasagna, the whole party isn't ruined. Your AI node is just making sure your data lasagna is perfectly baked.
I get it. It's the difference between a power hungry chef and a community feast. Less Skynet, more potlucknet. Dave, thank you for demystifying the digital foot soldiers, but why should our audience, the average person, care about these novelty spikes and how they're handled?
That's the million-dollar question, John. The novelty spike is just a fancy name for a moment your phone screams. What is going on? Think of it like this. When a sudden market crash happens, or a new convincing phishing scam emerges, or there's a flood of fake news after an event, that's a novelty spike. Well, the audience should care because right now, the reliance on a central system means they're often the last to know if the data is faulty or if an attack is happening. With a personal AI node and a mesh network, your system can spot the anomaly. That squirrel in a cat disguise faster and protect your accounts and your data before the central system even recognizes that there's a problem. It moves security, speed, and truth seeking from a distant corporate server right into your own hands. It gives you, the user, the power to filter out the noise and lies immediately. It's the difference between waiting for a national alert and having your neighbor yell, fire.
So, less waiting for the big, slow captain to turn the ship and more personal radar for digital dangers. I like that. Less Skynet, more potlucknet. That I can wrap my brain around. Dave, thank you for demystifying the digital foot soldiers and telling us why it matters right now.
Anytime, John.
Up next, we discuss a brief summary on what this week's four quadrant breakdown is going to be. And that is on Bessel van der Kolk's work and the book published title The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma.
Sounds awesome, John. Let's dive in.
Dave, this week we're diving into a book that sounds kind of heavy, but I hear it's a total game changer. Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score.
It is a heavy topic, John, but the Vanderkolk makes it digestible. At its core, the book's high-level summary is this. Trauma isn't just a story you tell with your words. It's a physical event that gets etched into your brain and, crucially, your body.
Wait, so you're telling me that nightmare I had about forgetting my pants in high school isn't just a bad memory? It's like a little tiny cave drawing inside my elbow?
Yeah, no, close enough. Imagine your brain is a super sophisticated computer. When you experience trauma, the alarm system or the amygdala goes haywire. It shouts danger, and the prefrontal cortex, your rational chill boss, goes offline. The trauma gets stored as sensory fragments, a sudden smell, a feeling of panic, a sound. It's not just stored as a neat narrative.
So, if I'm in a crowded grocery store and suddenly feel this irrational urge to bolt, that might not be about the price of kale. It could be my body replaying a moment of past overwhelm.
Exactly. Kolk shows that trauma survivors often live in a state of hyperarousal, constantly sensing danger even when they're safe. The score the body keeps is the constant tension in the shoulders, the irritable bowel, the sleep problems. It's the physical manifestation of the flight, fight, or freeze response that never fully turned off.
Okay, so why should our audience care about this, especially if they haven't experienced big T trauma? Why is this essential knowledge for everyone?
Because it totally shifts how we approach mental health. If we only talk about trauma, you're missing the other half of the equation. Kolk agrees that to truly heal, we need therapies that engage the body, not just the mind. We're talking stuff like yoga, EMDR, neurofeedback, even theater. These modalities help the body finish the incomplete action. The flight that was frozen, the fight that was suspended.
So the takeaway isn't just talk about it, but also move about it. It's about letting your body know, hey, we survived that. You can relax now. That makes so much sense. It gives me hope that healing isn't just endless therapy sessions. It can be about finding a good downward dog.
Precisely. The book's final high-level message is empowering. The body keeps the score, yes, but it also has the capacity for incredible resilience and healing. Once we give it the tools to reset the alarm, it's about moving from the feeling of helplessness to feeling in control of your physical self again.
Love it. Go read the book, people. It might just explain the shoulder crick that you've had since 2008.
Yes, the book is fantastic. Now let's pivot to this week and our deep dive and the four quadrants and the esoteric and materialistic perspectives. And the whole reason we brought this book up is because it's what our deep dive is about, the traumatized system versus the sovereign body. We'll start with the quadrant one, or the subject or the internal map, and I'm handing this over to you, John.
So, picture this, Dave. You've got this awesome old garden, right? Like a secret garden, but it's your body and your feelings. Lately, the roses are looking saggy. The soil is dry. It's just stuck. That's the feeling the smart people call static in your nervous system.
Static, John. We have better words for saggy roses. It's likely a stress response, maybe dysregulation of the HPA axis, the brain's alarm system. The plants are withering because the central control system, the nervous system, is overfiring. It's a biochemical issue.
See? That's where the fun starts. A fancy surveyor, let's call him Dr. Buzzkill, comes by, right? He takes one look at your whittled feelings and stamps a folder. Type B botanical failure. You're a failing gardener. He calls your garden or your life a diagnosis.
And look, he's using data. That type B failure is likely a clinical label, John. It's a way to categorize a specific set of symptoms like a maladaptive memory or PTSD. Trauma, in our view, is a broken file in the brain's hard drive. The goal of therapy, such as CBT or talk therapy, is to process that file until the error message goes away. It's a technical repair. We fix the broken file.
But here's the breakthrough. You grab the folder, rip off the label, and say, nope, this isn't a failure. This is a work in progress. The surveyor's map of your garden is old. You reclaim the right to call it what you want. Because if you only see the failure, you stop looking for the tiny new sprouts. You stop seeing the garden at all.
I get the sentiment, but functionally, accepting a clinical label gets you access to treatment. If you have a maladaptive memory, we know how to target and process it. If you just call it a work in progress, you might ignore the very real, measurable neurobiological issue. You're renting your identity from a diagnosis. Yes, but that rental comes with a repairman.
But what if the repairman is fixing the wrong thing? The esoteric truth is wilder, Dave. Trauma isn't just a busted memory, it's like a spooky ghost in the machine that froze time right when the bad thing happened. Your feeling of being stuck, that's your amazing soul, your non local consciousness trying to drive a ship, your body that's been all squeezed up or constricted.
Yeah, another type of ghost in the machine. Well, look, we know that acute stress does alter perception of time and can lead to an emotional freezing. But that's due to the massive release of stress hormones, not a ghost. That feeling of constriction is muscle tension, sympathetic nervous system overdrive, and the body's natural defense posture.
So let's talk action. Your plan is to go from I am traumatized to I am the awareness observing the constriction. My plan, the esoteric one, is to see trauma as a stuck map. You stop asking what is wrong with me and start asking where is my map currently out of date. You stop being the victim and start being the architect of your own garden.
Okay, the shift from victim to architect, I can get behind. That's empowering. We can call that the material action plan. Moving from the victim to observer, it's mindfulness, the awareness observing the physical and emotional constriction without attaching a judgment to it. But my map, the scientific one, is pretty up to date. It says you need to regulate the physical vessel.
And mine says you need to draw the boundary. The esoteric action plan is simply saying your primary experience, what your gut says, what your heart feels, is the final authority on where it hurts. You can listen to Dr. Buzzkill, but you get to be the boss of your own beautiful, weird, and slightly wilting garden. You're the sovereign. You're not broken. Your inner map was just a stuck, almost stuck in a loop.
And that's the point, John. Whether you call it a sovereign soul or a regulated nervous system, the power is in the pivot. You're not a type B failure or a broken file. You are the active, moment by moment observer and regulator of your own experience.
Exactly. So, for everyone listening, the care factor isn't about fixing a diagnosis, it's about reclaiming your story. This isn't just an intellectual debate between a scientist and a storyteller. This is a new survival guide. You care because understanding this duality, the material and the esoteric, gives you two powerful tools instead of one. You get the map and you get the compass. You can seek the technical repair and you can embrace the role of the sovereign architect.
That's right. The freedom is in the choice.
Go be the boss of your garden. Go draw a new map.
I love the garden references, John. All right, so that's the first quadrant. Let's look at quadrant two, or the physical body. And I'm handing the talking stick back to you, John. What do you got for me?
Hey Dave, you look like you just chugged a dozen espressos. You're shaking.
It's a mild tremor, John. My sympathetic nervous system is clearly overactive. Cortisol levels are likely spiking, indicating my fight or flight response is stuck on. I'm in a biological system with a chemical imbalance.
Chemical imbalance. That's your materialist view, right? The meat suit is broken and you need a technician. Like imagine you're playing a video game and your controller starts buzzing and vibrating in your hands. A technician rushes over and says your hardware is broken. Here's a dampener so you don't feel the buzz.
That's an overly simplistic.
Wait, now look up. You see a huge storm brewing outside your window. Rain, thunder, the whole deal. The buzzing isn't a glitch in your controller, Dave. Your hands are actually a high gain antenna and they're just picking up the massive atmospheric pressure change. You don't need a dampener. You need to learn how to put your feet on the ground to ground the signal.
See, this is where you go off the rails, John. You're trying to turn a textbook physiological response into a mystic weather report. The shaking is a stress response. The established view is that the body is stuck in a loop, a check engine light, and we use tools, often pharmacology, to dampen that signal so the system can function.
And that's the strategy because that dampener, that medication, that avoidance, it stops the shaking, sure, but also stops you from sensing the storm. It cuts off your sovereign intuition.
Intuition doesn't show up on an MRI, John. What does show up is the impact of trauma on the brain. Bessel and Kolk's work shows that trauma lives in the primitive brain, the antenna base, as you call it. The answer is not some airy fairy grounding ritual? The answer is tuning.
Okay, I love that you brought up Vander Kolk, and that's my jam. But you're missing the point. His fix is not a pill. It's using breath work, yoga, and movement to clear the static so that your biological antenna can receive good signals again. It's a hardware audit. The panic attack isn't a malfunction, it's a high volume signal from an antenna that hasn't been grounded. We just need to tune the dial.
Fine, I'll concede that Van der Kolk's methods are about data sovereignty. If you want to use big words, you aren't saying the heart rate monitor is lying, you're saying you decide what the heart rate monitor means for your soul, but you're stopping me from fixing the miniman.
You stop treating your body like a broken minivan, Dave, and start tuning it like a high gain antenna. The system wants to just dampen your signal with pills so you can go back to being a productive cog. But if you dampen the pain, you also dampen the intuition.
So, in plain English, what's the take home?
The system wants to take away your voice. They say you're broken, we'll fix you, but by using Vander Kolken's tools, breathe, movement, grounding, you're doing the fixing yourself. You realize the panic is just a really loud signal. Learning to tune your own dial means you no longer need the system's permission to feel safe in your own skin. Why care? Because everyone that has that buzzing feeling, that fear, that worry, the world tells you you need a dampener, something to shut it off so you can keep working. But if you shut off the pain, you shut off the inner voice too. Learning to tune your body instead of just dampening it means you get to keep your best superpowers, your gut feeling and your intuition. You become the boss of your own signal.
All right, John, I'm digging it. Great wrap up on quadrant two. Let's take a look at quadrant three or the shared narrative. Let's dive in, John.
You know what, Dave? I've done the last two. I want to be fair. Why don't you take this one?
All right. So we're talking about gardens, right? This whole universal growth standard thing from the community center is smart, and it's based on soil chemistry, pH levels, NPK ratios. That's real data. Why would we mess with that for some old stories?
Hold on, Dave. Those old stories are the soul of the garden. They replace the ancient folklore, the songs and whispers about the soil, with a big, boring 400-page lab manual. The manual's got the brain, sure, but it's got no heart. I keep the manual on my shelf for the numbers, but the myth, that's what's in my chest telling me how to grow.
Soul, whispers. Come on, John. If your tomatoes are getting blight, I need a diagnostic label. I need the science to fix it. The whole push to give people a code, PTSD, anxiety, it's how doctors communicate. It makes you a patient and it helps us define the problem by the symptoms. It's clinical.
Patient? Nah, I'm not a patient, Dave. When I struggle, it's not a medical case. It's a hero's descent. It means I'm going through a big change. Think of it like a video game. The old level just collapsed, so I can build a tougher, better version of me. I'm not just recovering, I'm upgrading.
That's a nice way to frame it, but it ignores the literal chemical imbalance. When you say hero's descent, I hear rejecting the clinical label, a diagnosis is a useful tool.
It is useful, like a hammer is useful, but you don't wear the hammer as your hat. A label like PTSD is an identity cage. It tells the world, "Hey, this one's a liability." When I swap the cold label for a mythic narrative, when I call it a rite of passage, I change the music I'm playing. I stop being a disorder and I start being someone who's actively evolving.
So you're saying a diagnosis is just a brand?
It can be. It's a great tool for doctors to talk to each other. We can call that the clinical view, but it shouldn't be your brand. The mythic view says your struggle is a story of strength, not a list of symptoms.
Fine, clinical versus mythic, I get the distinction. The standardized garden has no magic, but it yields consistent results. Your mythic garden sounds cool, but is it reliable?
Reliability isn't the point, Dave. Creativity is. Why do people care about any of this? Because a standardized garden has no magic. It just gives you food, but a mythic garden, your life when you see your struggles, is a great story. That is where the snowball of true creativity begins. You stop being a broken thing that needs fixing and start being a hero in your own story. And who doesn't want to be a hero?
Once again, John, I'm open to your side of things. It's important to have a holistic view on things, even if we choose to only accept one side. We're given the choice. Our agency and free will were not infringed, and that's important. All right, let's take this home with our last and final quadrant, or the rules and environment. No, really, John, you take this one. I got the last one.
So picture this, Dave. There's this little town, and the only one water hole. They slap a big old fence around it. The sign says healing water, $9,500 a gallon, only for authorized gardeners. Can you believe that?
Yeah, the classic care scenario. It's a closed loop system, John. They build a regulatory capture around healing. It's smart business, honestly. Control the supply, control the demand. You need the insurance, the approved doctor, the sanitized environment. It's healing behind a velvet rope, right?
Exactly. The velvet rope. But here's the funny part, the thing they forget. What happens when it rains, Dave? It pours. The water that falls from the sky is free. It's the sovereign breakthrough. You suddenly remember the license to heal your own soil is already in your pocket. So you start building your own rain barrels. That's your sovereign water, and you share it with everyone around you.
Look, I get the metaphor. It's the autonomous feedback loop. But let's be real, that filtered, controlled official water is actually probably safer. It's been tested. True healing, as you call it, might happen in the wild, but the wild is also where you pick up infections. My view is you need the science, you need the doctor's report, you need to know the data.
Sure, we love the science. Science is like the best shovel in the shed. It tells us the dirt's pH and how the leaves get their color. We're not anti science, but here's the deal. You don't need a $9,500 ticket to a fancy retreat to calm down your own belly nerves. Your vagus nerve, true recovery, that's your esoteric action plan. It happens in your own garden, through your own daily habits, your trusted friends, the hive. It's your own feedback loop. You just cut the middleman out of your soul.
That's a great soundbite, John. Cut the middleman out of your soul. But practically, that velvet rope exists because the system has built a dependency loop. It makes you wait for an official to tell you you are okay. If you're truly sick, you need medicine. When the storm gets too heavy, you need a doctor. We respect the medicine, we respect the data.
And that's where we agree. We respect the medicine when the storm is too much. But sovereignty, Dave, is about who holds the keys to the gate. We're not rejecting the doctor's report, we're just auditing the people who tell us the report is everything we are. We are the architects. We use the science as a tool, but we are the ones who decide what grows in our garden. The license to heal belongs to you, not the big building.
Okay, John, I'll give you this. Realizing the power is yours, not the institution's, is the sovereign win. It's a good mental breakthrough.
It's more than mental, pal. It's a systemic independence. So, why should you care about a fence around some water? Because the system has built a velvet rope around your own well being. They want you to think you're broken and you need to pay a king's ransom to be fixed by an authority. But if you remember that it rains for free and that your own hands can build the barrel, you realize the license to heal is already in your pocket. You get to be the architect of your own life, and that's a freedom worth fighting for.
Wow, we've hit all four quadrants. Let's put it all in a summary so the audience can see how it all fits together and why it matters to our architects listening. And move on to this week's sovereign breakthrough, reclaiming the frontier of the body. So we've spent this episode dissecting the clinical cage built around your nervous system using the body keeps count as a frame of reference. Now it's time for the roadmap. This is reclaiming the frontier of the body. It's a four-quadrant plan to reclaim your mind, your body, your story, and your power.
Think of it like a prison break movie, but instead of digging with a spoon, we're using your own brain. And trust me, I tried the spoon thing, it's messy.
Well, let's start with the first quadrant, subjective or your own inner world. The action is reclaim the narrative.
This is about your story, right? Like the one you tell yourself in the shower.
Yes, the priesthood, the therapists, the textbooks, they want you to go see trauma as a broken file. A diagnosis like PTSD becomes your rented identity. You're letting a stranger define your past.
So the diagnosis is like a bad Yelp review that you let the restaurant owner write for you.
Perfect analogy. We say trauma is a stagnant map. It's not broken. It's just stuck in a loop. The action step is simple. You own the map. You stop seeing yourself as a broken patient and start seeing yourself as a cartographer of your own life. Now, let's look at quadrant two, objective, your physical body, the action step, tune the antenna.
Ah, my meat suit. This is where the panic attacks live.
They call panic a glitch disorder. We call it a high gain static on the receiver. Your nervous system is an antenna that's picking up too much signal. The system solution, pills to dampen the signal. So you become a quiet, compliant cog in the machine.
They want to turn the volume down on me. No, thank you. No.
Yeah, the escape is tuning the antenna yourself. You learn to regulate your own nervous system. You keep the intuition, that strong signal, but you ditch the overwhelm. It's not being less you, it's about having a clearer signal. And now on to quadrant three, cultural, your shared world, the action, mythic reclamation.
Mythic, like Zeus and stuff?
Sort of. You need to swap the diagnostic label for the heroic descent. Stop being a clinical case study and start seeing your trauma as a rite of passage.
Oh, so PTSD isn't what's wrong with me. It's the scar I got fighting the dragon. I like that.
Yeah, the medical label only gives you a waiting room. It's an identity cage designed for managed care. A mythic story gives you a destination, a future where the struggle had meaning. Your escape is to replace your chart with your epic. Now, finally, quadrant four, systemic rules of the game. The action, unplug the middleman.
This is where we tell the 9,500 velvet rope to buzz off, right? Because I can't wait, right? Right.
Exactly. The system has copyrighted healing to keep you dependent. They've convinced you that the license to heal belongs to them. We say the license is already yours.
It's like they're charging me to breathe my own air.
The ultimate systemic rebellion is realizing that true recovery happens in the wild, in your daily life, not just behind a clinical door. You can regulate your own vagus nerve for free. We call this distributed healing. You go to the hospital if you're in crisis, absolutely, but don't wait for a huge ticket to start that daily work of grounding your own antenna.
All right, we reviewed all of the important stuff from the analysis. Bring it all together for our architects, Dave.
Sounds good, John. Here's the simple fact. The escape route is your permission slip. Reclaim the narrative so you own your past. Tune the antenna so you control your body. Mythic reclamation so you have a destination. And unplug the middleman so you own the power to heal.
You are not broken. You are not a case study. You're the hero of your own escape story, and the keys were in your pocket all along. Let's get back to work.
Fantastic, John. All right, that wraps up this week's deep dive. And finally, let's look at our sovereign win segment for this week, which is the nervous system audit. Back to you, John.
This week's sovereign win, Dave, our resident brain wizard. You've hit us with some heavy homework this week, bridging the gap between the body keeps the score and your own sovereign architecture. Sounds less like a self help exercise and more like building a Death Star.
Well, it's less about a Death Star, John, and more about tuning your personal radio. Look, we've established that your body is a meat suit. It's an antenna. The book says trauma is stored in the body. We say trauma is just static on the line.
Static, I like that. Much less dramatic than a deep seated psychosomatic wound.
Exactly. And the homework, the assignment, mapping the static, is the architect's guide to clearing the interference. The whole system, with a capital S, is constantly sending signals. We need to find where those signals are hijacking your physical antenna.
So, Step one for the audience: identify the trigger, the system signal. Give us a real world example because my constriction is usually just realizing I forgot to hit record.
Well, a classic system signal, but we're looking for the big ones, right? You're scrolling through the news feed, the headlines there are designed to create panic. Suddenly your chest tightens, shallow breathing, heart rate spikes, or you get an email from a priesthood authority, your boss, a doctor, some official, and you feel that familiar clench in your gut. That's the trigger. That's the system signal your antenna is receiving.
Got it. That gut clench. That's our cue. Now for the fun part: perform the four-quadrant audit. This is where we stop calling it anxiety and start calling it what?
We stop reaching for the clinical label. We stop being the patient and start being the architect. We use the sovereign framework to rewrite the experience.
Quadrant one, subjective. Instead of I'm having anxiety, we say I'm the awarenessness observing a tightening in my chest. It's a nice mental trick. You create a bit of distance.
It's not a trick, it's a shift in identity. You move from the effect, the symptom, to the cause, the observer.
Quadrant two, objective. My antenna is receiving a high gain signal that isn't, it isn't grounded for. This is where the comedy comes in. You're not stressed. You just have a bad reception.
Exactly. You're shifting from viewing your body as a meat suit that's failing to a finely tuned antenna that just needs to be grounded.
Quadrant three, cultural. I reject the idea that this is a disorder and I view it as a systemic friction I can navigate. And I love this one. It's permission to be difficult.
It's a declaration of sovereignty. You're taking your experience out of the medical industrial complex and putting it back in your control. It's not your fault. It's just the friction of living in a hyper signal world.
And quadrant four, the active part, systemic. I am reclaiming my license to heal by taking 3 slow, deep breaths to ground the signal. So, what we do with all this clever reframing, Dave,
You move directly to the grounding feedback loop. You're intellectually reframe the problem. Now you need an unauthorized physical practice. And I mean unauthorized, something the system hasn't packaged and sold back to you as self-care.
unauthorized. I love the sound of that, like a bootleg cure.
Exactly. 5 minutes of breath work, splashing cold water on your face, a physiological circuit breaker, or my personal favorite, a simple shakeout of the limbs like a dog drying off. You're discharging the static.
And the goal is to notice if the ghost in the machine, that old trauma response, dissolves.
When you stop treating it like a medical case study and start treating it like a tuning issue, it dissolves. The homework isn't about solving your trauma, it's about proving to yourself in real time that you possess the mechanisms to clear the static and reclaim the signal. And go forth, listeners, and tune your antennas. So before we wrap everything up, that's kind of what this audit is all about. Let's take a look at what you're looking at in your phones, what you're seeing on television and stuff like that, and take a step back, break the fourth wall, if you will, and see how it makes you feel. If it gives you a fear response, that's a powerful signal. You should really, obviously get away from that signal, right? And you should examine why you have that signal. So this nervous system audit is really going to kind of show you throughout your week, right? What is causing me harm that I'm not realizing, right? And how can I go about changing my behavior to prevent that kind of systemic harm from occurring? And when you realize that all of these things in our environment are causing these pressures, and you start removing them one by one, you realize your stress levels decrease dramatically. You're able to finally take that deep breath and say, oh, you know what? I'm going to be okay. This is going to be fine. I just wanted to make sure we wrapped it up and put a little bow on it before we kind of departed with our architects here, John. So I'm gonna hand it back to you. Let's take us out.
Dave, that was beautifully put. We'll see you next week right here on the Sovereign System.